We got Ann Canfield. She's going to do her segment again. So welcome in, Ann. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you doing today,
I
Kathleen?
am good. I am very, very good. Very busy, but good. Busy is always good, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, again, the folks that are listening in, if you have any questions for Ann, again, the telephone number is 203-525-5009. If you want to be part of it, you can even text me. It's my personal cell phone number. We'll get you connected with Ann. So, Ann, I'm going to let you take the reins, honey. And real quick, side note, if you missed the segment from last week, week number 1, it's up on thechillfactor.net radio on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, and 13 other platforms. Take it away, Ann. It's for you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
Today's episode is called Making a Confrontation into a Conversation. We'll explore when communication gets hard. What actually makes a conversation become a confrontation? What makes them so scary, and how can we reverse the confrontation back into a conversation? The goal is to take the fear away so we can make those difficult conversations today, make them so that we can avoid confrontations tomorrow. You see, we may be the smartest person in the room, and this is about creating awareness and clarity in the other person that you want to have this conversation with. Because the goal is for both of you to see the situation from the same viewpoint. We have to understand that for every behavior that we engage in and others engage in, there is something that sets up that behavior, and there's also something that is maintaining that behavior. You are there to start the plan to solve the issue, because whenever there's a new behavior, something has to maintain that change as well. So to kind of put this in perspective, I am going to give you an example. Today in virtual radio land, we are going to meet Mary. You see, Mary works at a hair clip factory. We love Mary. She's been there for about 4 years. The challenge that we have is all of a sudden, Mary has decided to take it upon herself that when the next operator comes in, she gives them all of these notes about the errors that she found in their work and how to correct those errors during their shift. She's actually come over to management and told them, we really need to get these people trained. I'm working them. I'm helping. I'm finding errors. The staff, however, are not very pleased with how they are being spoken to from Mary. So during our example today, we actually are going to use Mary to talk about how to apply the methods that I'm going to give you. I'm a huge fan of acronyms. The acronym for a confrontation into a conversation is the word PALS, P-A-L-S. Because our goal is to be pals again and to stop avoiding the confrontation. The P stands for prepare for the conversation that you're going to have. The A is to ask questions, to seek first to understand. The L is to listen and actively listen to the other person. And the S is to start plan of action to solve the problem. So, Kathleen, I have to ask you, do you have any confrontations that you've had in the past or any situation or even you've had to confront somebody?
Absolutely. A difference of opinion, which we are all breeded differently, if you will, definitely makes a major play. Again, I'll go back to somewhat of a scenario from a wedding that I had done years ago, asking the bride and groom or the groom or bride, if you will, what music they want to play. So in confrontation, sometimes what happens is other family members want to be involved as well, actively involved in what the planning and placement of songs are. So what I do is I sit everybody down and make sure that everybody understands that it is the goal of the bride and groom. As long as they're okay with it, this is their day. Let's move forward with their choices. So it's not always easy, but yet you have to soften some people up. It doesn't happen all the time, but you have to just tell them kindly, think about all your guests that are coming in, what's going to happen, who's going to make this decision. If they turn the reins over, it's a different story. So you definitely have to be very gentle with all of your bookings when it comes to stuff like this. So we guess. So there has been some time, where people have actually said, you know what, I don't really like that song, meaning the in-laws or cousins or aunts. Sometimes people just have a difference of opinion on music. But again, I leave it up to whoever's in charge. I have seen scenarios with other DJs that actually have put that out there, and they turn around and they say, I really think it's, whoever's paying you, and that's who decides on the music. But you want those memories. So you have to sit down and you have to tell them, listen, this is how it is. This is what it is. It's your choice. And then sometimes people come to a decision. Sometimes they don't. I always feel like sometimes you're a referee and you need a whistle to blow. But at the same time, you have to keep calm, keep your composure. And sometimes you have to walk away to be able to come back to give something good. Give them food for thought.
And you bring up a really good point. What we're going to talk about here is the importance of having that safe space so that people feel heard, their opinions are respected, but you're still objective of what the goal is at the end. And that's really an important point. Last week we talked about active listening. And this is where eye contact, posture, and sincerity and believing in what you're telling them. Because to your point, the goal is to be sure that the bride is happy, or to your point, whoever it is that vested party, and explaining to those other people that. But again, it's coming from this place of caring and concern and believing it, which is so important. That sincerity goes a long way. So thank you for sharing that, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
So the first thing we're going to talk about, which Kathleen kind of brought up, is how do we prepare for the conversation that we're going to have? One thing we need to look at is we're going to recognize what comes before and after the issue at hand. I know your example was regarding the music. I'm going to use a couple of work examples because what we really need to look at is what is current state. And when we look at current state, we're reviewing how the current state of behavior is serving the other person. How is it benefiting them? We know it's not benefiting you, or you wouldn't feel the need to have a conversation.
Absolutely.
But how is it benefiting them? This allows us to see the situation from their perspective. We may even think there's an option to ask for their input on how to solve the issue. There's a reason of how we came to this point. We as leaders, we don't need to be validated. However, our goal is that we do need to validate others, and we need to meet them where they are, looking for those win-win solutions, facilitating the process to make decisions that benefit the company goals and the people. I'll give you a classic example. Let's say John comes in late every day to work. So if we look at that scenario, what comes before the behavior is that he has an early start time. He signed up for first shift. That's what comes before, because we kind of set that up for him. What comes after is John comes in late to work every day and nobody says anything. And you might think, well, yeah, but that's not a behavior. But from John's perspective, the fact that nobody says anything, it's benefiting him because he's not getting a negative consequence. But the positive consequence is he's not being spoken to. From his perspective, he doesn't see the problem because he comes in late, 5-10 minutes, he goes to work, a couple of coworkers might go, hey, by the way, you need to be on time. Yeah, no problem. The boss isn't giving me any slack. I'm good. Because that's kind of that consequence. When we look at Mary, Mary is correcting her coworkers. What comes before this behavior is that there are errors in the work. So there's errors that she's finding in the product that's being produced. That's what's coming before it. She finds the errors. She decides to talk to the employees about it. How is this benefiting her? Well, if we look at it from Mary's perspective, Mary's kind of feeling empowered. Like, yeah, I know that better than you do. I'm totally kind of in charge here. I'm going to point it out. And for the company, she is allowing the errors to be found so that bad product doesn't go out the door. And that's a really important point because we might be annoyed at how it's being handled, but from Mary's perspective, she thinks she's doing a great job. She's helping the company in reality. So we don't want to stop Mary from helping the company, but we do want to address the fact of how she's helping the company. And it's really kind of important to take a look at that because whatever that comes before that behavior and after that behavior, whatever the solution that you're thinking of that you're going to bring aside to try to fix that besides just the conversation, you have to think that you're going to have to maintain that behavior somehow. And there's got to be something in it for them. There's a reason why they're doing it, however they're doing it. I'll give you another example. There's somebody that I used to work with that would send emails and would not describe what the email was about, but would give me this huge chain of emails. Well, why was she doing that from her perspective? It was easier for her. It was quicker. She could just forward, send, and be done. That's why she was sending it that way. And once you kind of think about that preparing, you are preparing what the objections may be and think, okay, but how can I help that? What is going to be my comeback for that? So that is our P. We are going to prepare for the conversation. Going back to kind of Kathleen's point, when you have that meeting, it's the demeanor, your tone, your posture. All of this is very important because the goal is to make a safe space for this person so that they will open up. So what are the challenges? How do we get here? How can I help? How can I be a resource? Leadership is not about being the best. Leadership is about making others better. So our A is ask questions. We are going to start with seeking first to understand. Now, we could go in and say, so why are you doing that? However, there's a rule. We are not going to ask any why questions. We're going to ask what and how questions. The hard part about this is, again, you're looking to be sincere. You're looking to be curious, and you're looking to be observant. And when you think about, we go back to our example with Mary, we're looking at Mary, and now that we're kind of playing it through and preparing for our meeting, we realize, she really is helping. She's actually stopped like over 500 parts, bad parts from walking out the door, which saved the company a lot of money. You know what? I got to hear her out. I got to see what we can do to solve this issue of how this is going and what we can come up with. Regarding John, sincerely being able to say, John's been here for 2 years and all of a sudden he's showing up late every day. Like, what is going on in John that I can help him with? So that question might look, John, what's holding you back from coming in on time? We didn't have this issue till recently. Can you share with me? How can I help? And then for Mary, we might ask a question such as, Mary, walk me through the issues that you're finding that you need to correct the staff on. Can you kind of walk me through what that looks like? Other questions might be, what does this process look like? What are the challenges that you're finding in your position? You may have some questions that might be very unique to you, such as for me, I have a signature line. I have used it for years. And again, it's because I'm sincere. I am being very open and honest with people. And I might say, I'm sorry, I am really confused. Can you just help me understand this? I need to understand this situation. I need to understand why the process is this way. I used to have another boss of mine years ago. They used to say, and again, this isn't a question, but this was kind of his signature line. And it was his way of being able to kind of take it on himself. And he would say, I apologize. I apparently didn't explain this to you very well. Let's go over it again so I can understand where you might be stuck. And that was his way of kind of softening it a little bit to be able to meet you where you are, to show you that we do have an issue that we need to address. Let me ask a question. So Kathleen, when you think about that, is there any kind of questions at all or anything that you've done in your career to show that you've kind of left that open space to seek first to understand?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, backing off for a little bit. I actually, clarity wise, coming to a compromise halfway. I call it half and half. Maybe I could use that as a better lack of words. So, I know Mikey's listening in and we have lots of ideas. We're constantly rebirthing the radio station all the time. He has ideas. I have ideas. We kind of meet in the middle. I call it a half and half. Sometimes we can't come to an agreement. We'll have to put it away for a little bit and come back to it. But sometimes what I like, he likes, we can merge it together, So try to work as gingerly, if you will, gently with each other. And if it becomes heated, you just say, you know what, again, We have to walk away and then refresh our brain. Sometimes you just need some new ideas from different people too.
Sure.
Getting the advice from other folks is definitely key.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that it always works. Again, trial and error, half and half.
Right.
Your idea, my idea, we can do it together.
Absolutely. And I know that some of the leadership folks out there will call that a win-win situation. We're looking for something that's a win-win. And there's also a great line that some other circles have used, that you can call out a word called Elmo. Have you heard this, Kathleen?
No, never heard of it before.
It's a really great word. And so what happens is if you're having a discussion about something and you're kind of thinking you're not getting anywhere, you're kind of spinning your wheels, you can go, you know what, I'm calling Elmo on this. And it means enough, let's move on.
There you go. Next subject, right?
Exactly. And it just kind of means like Elmo, and it kind of lets you move on from the conversation. So we've done our prepared. We prepared for our meeting, and then we've asked our questions. The next one is our L, and that means we need to listen. And we need to actually really actively listen. We need to put aside our agenda and what we're expecting to get out of this. And we need to look at it with fresh eyes, with posture, eye contact, and validating how they feel as a person. Going back to active listening from last week, we're not looking to be interesting. We're looking to be interested in the person and recognizing how they feel about what we're talking about. So when we look at this, such as our John, who might be showing up to work late each day, it might be something of saying, John, this sounds like it might be a personal matter. Can you please share what you're comfortable with so we can look at how we're going to address this issue? I'm here to help you. And again, going back to that sincerity and to that belief, you're giving the people the benefit of the doubt. In most cases, as we know, people are not literally waking out of their beds and plotting to be mean or devious or do this awful job. Or that might be a different conversation with HR. But this is a chance to clear the air and give them a moment to tell you what is really the issue here. Because apparently something has gone off the rails. And it allows you to kind of have that opportunity with them. And in some cases, it actually builds relationship at the end of the conversation, because they can think, wow, I did not know that you were that open or that you were willing to listen to me. Because as we know, and sometimes the subject, they don't want to talk about it. They don't feel that you're going to understand. They don't think you're going to listen. So by listening and actively listening, you're actually building credibility for you as a leader. Some other examples is being able to say, to clarify, Mary, the challenge that you might be having is that the training is not adequate for the new staff. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes.
And getting some clarity on that, because when we look at it from that direction, like, oh, yeah, you're right. The staff, you just changed the training manuals. It's not adequate. That's why I'm finding the errors. That puts a whole new perspective on the issue. And it actually goes down a completely different line of how to solve the problem. Because you came in thinking, well, we just need to tell Mary she's got to knock it off and stop talking to people about all these errors. And now after talking to Mary, when you're actively listening to her, you're recognizing, wait a minute, the training that we have is not good. And that's actually a different problem that we need to solve. We still need to talk about Mary, but actually it's the training that's really the core issue. Because if she wasn't finding as many errors, she wouldn't have to be out there correcting the staff all the time. So we might actually have Mary start working with the training managers on working on the training and talking to the training managers about that. The second one is our John, for his late, we might have to clarify. So John, just to confirm, the fact that you just have a newborn at home, getting up early is a challenge for you, and be able to recognize that and being able to go down that of however that might be solved, of dates or flex scheduling, or the fact of, hey, let me buy you an alarm, John. Sounds like your phone's not working anymore for you.
I have to tell you, Ann, for many, many years myself, I have been my own boss, and sometimes it's hard, and some people will call me a boss, okay, boss, okay. I'm not a boss, but I want to be together as a team. And I think what you're doing is just amazing. We should all work together if we can. try to come together at least. Everybody has a
Yeah.
difference of opinions. But again, if you could put your ideas on the table and then try to branch off of that. Even, I was thinking about, Anne, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but, sometimes when you work in a workforce, if you did like a dish or a bowl, and you took everybody's ideas from that, say there's 4 people at the round table, right?
Yep.
They're all sitting down, and you put it in that bowl, and you kind of pick out, the different ideas from everybody. Pick one idea weekly. Like I have meetings sometimes with the crew that I have here, and we do our monthly meetings. And I was thinking about it, everybody just put their idea in the bucket, and then we can either run with it or we can add to it. You know what I mean? Like we can use it as a factor.
Yep, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And to your point, what happens is when you actually apply this concept of, instead of looking at it as a confrontation, instead of looking at it that way, looking at it as a conversation, the goal is to figure out, how do we move forward? Because in most cases, just having a conversation and telling somebody to knock it off and don't do that isn't it isn't going to necessarily change the behavior.
Right.
In some cases, it might, but 9 times out of 10, there's a lot more to it than that. There's a reason why it's gotten to this point, because if it was that simple, the minute somebody arrived late the first time, you'd be like, hey, by the way, John, you're late. Please don't do that again. And you wouldn't have to ever get to that point.
Right.
But when you have something that kind of happens over and over and over, recognizing, okay, where do we go from here? So, and that brings us actually to the letter S. So we prepared for our meeting, we asked our questions, we listened, and now the S is, we're going to start to make the plan, because the issue did not happen overnight, and it will not be solved overnight. It is important that you make your objective clear. You need to be able to say, Sally, I brought you in today because I really needed to talk to you about X. You need to make it clear that, John, I heard you. I understand where you're coming from. I really need to understand that as the company, as the shift supervisor, we really need you to be here on time. Please help me understand, how can we solve this problem? We are not trying to hide the problem. We're being objective about it. But we also want to recognize that us as the leader of coming in and initiating the conversation, we probably have some stake in the game, and it's going to need a little investment from us of what the follow-up is going to be and what might work. And be honest about the fact of saying, hey, you know what, we'll try this for a week. If it doesn't work, we're going to meet back again. And being able to do that, because the goal is to have them feel safe and feel comfortable going into the conversation, but to have both of you leave on that same note of feeling good about what you've talked about and walking away that you've both been heard, you've both been understood, and you both know where you're coming from both sides of this. To your point, Kathleen, make it a half and half. Make it a win-win situation. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to lose credibility and be able to say, okay, John, that sounds great. Wonderful. Just be on time for work. And then a few days pass and you kind of take your foot off the gas pedal. You stop paying attention. And then John ends up being late for another 2 weeks. And then you got to start it all over again. So you have to recognize that when you prepare for that meeting, what are you willing to do to ensure that whatever that outcome needs to be, that you have some stake and you've got that plan set aside of what you're going to do. Because it's important to recognize that. And that might have actually been part of the issue, even wanting to go into a conversation saying, well, it's all my fault anyway. He's been coming late forever. But, I hate having to talk about this stuff. I hate having to remind people of that. But that's a little bit of an issue. So what can we do for you to feel better about that?
And I think repetitiveness is consistent. Like if you repetitively do this foundation, I think you build structure off of it, and people will actually hold on to that, where they'll get it.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Because again, having those conversations actually builds relationship, and they'll actually respect you even more because you were brave enough to have the conversation with them and to be able to bring it up. And 9 times out of 10, when you bring them into your office, they know why they're there. They know why they're there. You know why they're there. You're not hiding anything. You're basically giving them a safe space. Say, hey, we got an issue here. I want to work with you and solve this problem together. but I need you to meet me halfway.
Yep.
What can we do to work on that? So the takeaways from this episode is, how do we open that up to have that safe space and being able to know what the call to action is going to be after that conversation? Because again, what we're looking for is, we want them to be able to walk away and say, hey, you know what? That was actually a pretty decent conversation. Yeah, it sounds like I need to, going back to Mary and the hair clip, Mary's going to walk out of that conversation and be like, wow, I really felt like you listened to me, heard what I had to say. And it sounds like, yeah, I need to tone down. I need to not, bring this up to every operator all the time, but he's also given me another way to do it. But he's the training manager, and I'm going to work with the training manager on it, or whatever that situation might be. Mark in your calendar for you to follow up again with them to be sure how it's going, to be successful. So that's a little bit about the confrontation into a conversation using that wonderful little acronym POWS, because at the end of the day, that's really what we're looking for, right? We're looking for everything to be a conversation so that we have that open relationship and communication within the workforce.
Absolutely. I agree with you. And then it brings smiles and it warms your heart when you communicate. Yes.
Exactly. If we can keep it open, it totally is a much better atmosphere, and it actually increases morale. And people appreciate somebody who's open and honest with them at all times, even when it gets hard, even if it's it's something they don't want to hear. And I think that's really good. And I will tell you, you can actually follow me on Instagram at Finding Strength with Ann if this has been helpful. And we're going to be planning next week's episode. We're thinking about possibly doing sample scenarios of confrontation, or we might be talking about building relationships in the workplace.
Beautiful.
So,
You know what, Ann, I was going to mention to you, Mikey's listening in on the other end. So for the Chill Factor website, if you want to kind of type out-ish, if you will, some questions ahead of time, and maybe we could put them up there, and then people can go over if you have some questions, and then look at it prematurely before you come on. So maybe we can get people to get involved, if you will,
Right. That sounds absolutely wonderful. I'd be more than happy to do that as well.
Wonderful.
So that would be absolutely wonderful.
All righty. Well, we've got a special song. Ann had messaged me early on today. Andy Grammer, Don't Give Up on Me. Here on the Chill Factor for the second week in a row, my buddy, my friend, one of the sponsors here on the Chill Factor, and Canfield. It's always a pleasure to sit and listen to all your wonderful advice. I feel like I get a sense of peace when I talk to you. So that is a wonderful thing. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me today. This has been wonderful. And like I said, hopefully it will increase communication in the workplace and even at home as well. So,
and if you need Ann, you know where to reach me, and you know where to reach Ann too. She's always doing something positive. So thanks again, Ann. You have a wonderful evening. Until next week, we're going to continue on with the music, but she's got a special song that she asked me to play earlier, and I definitely got it up for you right now. Ann, you have a good day, and you have a good rest of your week. Stay safe out there, please.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Kathleen. I'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.